Hello, everyone, and welcome to lesson 2 of IELTS Key Principles. Chris here. I'm going to be taking you through this lesson today again. Just let me check, as always, because this is a live lesson. Just let me check that it is actually live and it's all working okay. Chris here. Excellent. It's all working. So, in the comments, can you let me know that you can see the screen? The screen says IELTS Key Principles speaking. And if you can hear my voice, just let me know in the comments because it's working fine for me, but it doesn't always work for everybody. So just let me know in the comments that it's working for you. This is a live lesson, so if you are watching the recording of this lesson, feel free to skip ahead 3 or 4 minutes and you'll get to the start of the lesson. We won't begin the lesson for another 3 or 4 minutes. Just gives people enough time to get in, to check everything, and so that we can start when everybody who has showed up live can get the most benefit out of it. Okay, so let's see who is saying hello. Hello to Asan, Olinka. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Ishmael, Asan, Hiba, Rujin. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me and see me and everything. Zinat, Maximad, Mahi, Amali. Excellent. Thank you for showing me that it is working. So it seems to be working perfectly for everybody. So that's good. All right. So in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. It's always interesting to see all of the different places that you guys are in. And we'll begin in about 2 minutes. It's going to be quite a long lesson today. There's a lot to cover for speaking, but we'll try and get through it as quickly as we can. Some of you are asking questions. I won't be able to answer questions in this lesson because I want to focus on teaching the lesson. If I answer questions, then I'll spend all day answering questions and I can't teach the lesson. All right. So another 1 minute before we begin. It's currently 8:59 a.m. here in Ireland, where I am at the moment. Let's see where you guys are. So people from Nepal, from Poland, from Afghanistan, from UAE, Bhutan, Pakistan, India, Philippines, Vietnam. Those are all the most popular countries for our website. I think India is number 1, and then the Philippines, and then Vietnam, Pakistan. Those are always the most popular. Nigeria as well. The most popular countries because they've got the most people apart from China. But most Chinese people don't know about us because of their firewall, unfortunately. Okay, so let's get going. Just before we start, yesterday there were a number of people complaining about they couldn't see the screen, or they couldn't hear me, or basic technology issues. I can't stop the lesson and help you fix your own individual IT problems. 99% of the time, if you have an IT issue, a technology issue, just refresh the browser, use a different browser, or use a different device, and that will fix it. I obviously can't teach you an IELTS lesson and help you with your tech problems at the same time. So please try and help yourself, or try and help people in the comments if they start complaining. But we always get a few people. So, all right. So what are we doing this week? So yesterday we focused on reading, and we looked at specifically matching headings questions, and we gave you a task. So if you haven't watched the lesson, it's already posted here in the Facebook group. You can go and find it, and you can view that lesson this week if you didn't catch the live lesson already. Many of you did the task, many of you didn't. You still have time to complete the task. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to complete the tasks, because it is going to help you actually improve. You will not improve just watching these lessons. You will improve if you watch the lesson and do the task. Today, we're going to focus on speaking, and then tomorrow at the same time, we're going to look at writing task 2, and that will be our last lesson of this course. Lessons will be 9 a.m. UK time each morning, so it's currently 9 a.m. now, and tomorrow at 9 a.m. we'll have the next lesson. Recording sent after each lesson via email, so lots of you complained that you couldn't find the lesson. We posted it here in the group and emailed it to you, so there's not much else we can do. But all lessons are going to be deleted at the end of the week, so you have 3 or 4 days to watch 3 lessons. That should be more than enough time. And they'll all be deleted at the end of the week to give you the motivation to actually do the lessons. So what will we do today? We're going to review yesterday's task and give you some really, really important information about yesterday's task and about preparation in general. We're going to give you a strategy for parts 2 and 3 of the speaking test. We're going to show you how to improve your grammar, your vocabulary, your fluency and coherence, and your pronunciation, and how to practice at home for free. We realize that many of you will not be able to pay for a teacher, pay for a course, so we're going to show you how you can practice at home for free as well. And we're going to give you a practice task at the end. I've created a document that will allow you to do this task with practice questions and everything in there. So let's review yesterday's task. And the answers that I read to yesterday's tasks reveal the reason why most students fail the test, because there are 3 types of IELTS student, but only one type of student will get the score that they need. So if you look at yesterday's tasks, it will reveal which type of student you are: student A, student B, or student C. Student A are students who said something like, I didn't get them all correct, I'm not good enough, and I'm going to fail. So many of you did the task and you didn't get 100%, and you were putting crying emojis and everything and saying, oh, this is terrible and I'm going to fail. Yes, you are going to fail if you believe this. You won't fail if you change your mindset and you become more like a student C. But if you believe that you are not good enough and you're going to fail and you don't do anything about that, then you are going to fail. The second type of student was student B, who said, the strategy didn't work. I didn't get all the questions correct. The strategy is not good enough. I'm going to fail. So student A blames themselves. Student B blames the strategy and blames the teacher. Both of these students are going to fail. Why is that? Because they never take any action to actually improve themselves. They take no responsibility for their own actions. All right. Whereas the student that's going to pass is student C, saying, I didn't get them all correct. I need to learn from my mistakes, and then I'm going to pass. I've probably helped more students get the scores they need than anybody else in the world. I'm not saying that to brag or saying that I'm the best teacher in the world or anything like that. I'm just saying that as probably a fact. These students always pass. These students always fail. But the great thing about this is it's about mindset. It's not about skill. Student A and student B can change their mindset immediately. Student A needs to be less tough on themselves, and they need to take action to improve, because they can improve. Anybody can improve. Student B needs to take responsibility and realize that it's going to be them that gets the scores they need, not their teacher, not a strategy. And student C, these are the students that will always pass, because they're using their mistakes, they're using their weaknesses, and they're turning those weaknesses into strengths. So if you were student A or student B, you need to change your mindset. So let's have a look now at the speaking test. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Very, very simple. All right, so it's divided into 3 parts. And it's very important that you understand what these 3 parts are and the different types of questions in them, because it requires a different way of answering them, a different strategy for each of the different parts. So let's have a look at some typical questions for Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. So very typical questions for Part 1 would be, tell me about your hometown. a little bit more about your hometown. Tell me about the home you live in. How long have you lived there? What do you like about living there? So they're normal everyday type of questions asking you about where you live, what your job is, your likes and dislikes. Not very difficult questions and very predictable questions. Part 2, it is impossible to predict what topic you will get for part 2. Even if you go to these YouTube channels and websites where they tell you, oh, we're going to tell you the topics that are going to come up in part 2, they're lying to you. You cannot predict what is going to come up, and that is a very, very dangerous strategy. But you can predict the format of the question. What they will do is they will always give you a topic. So here is the main topic, and then they'll give you a list of bullet points that they want you to talk about, normally 4 bullet points. So this is a typical part 2 question, a general topic, and then 4 bullet points. Part 3 questions, something like, let's consider first of all how people's values have changed. What kind of things give status to people in your country? Have things changed since your parents' time? Finally, let's talk about the role of advertising. Do you think advertising influences what people buy? So very, very, very different questions here compared to part 1. Part 1, normal everyday questions. Part 3, more difficult, more abstract questions. So 3 sections, 3 different styles of answers and 3 different strategies. Part 1, normal, familiar topics that require a short answer, not, short as in yes or no, but in short compared to the other ones. These questions are all about you, so you can't get them wrong. It's impossible to get part 1 questions wrong because they're all about you. Part 2, you should be familiar with the vast majority of topics here. So they're normally on topics that 99% of people will know a little bit about. Requires you to speak for up to 2 minutes. This is a monologue when you're just talking by yourself. The examiner is not asking you question after question. You're just talking by yourself for 2 minutes about the topic that they give you. Part 3, more abstract questions. These questions are more about ideas than about you. So part 1, these questions are about you. Part 3, these questions are about ideas. That's a very important distinction between part 1 and part 3. And they require a significant amount of development. Part 1, you don't really need to develop your ideas that much. Part 3, you really do need to develop your ideas. They require much longer answers. So we're not going to look at part 1. We're going to give you a part 2 strategy and a part 3 strategy. Part 1, you can look up strategies for that. It's not that important and it's not that difficult. Let's focus on the 2 parts that students find the most difficult, which will be part 2 and part 3. So many students fear part 2 because they have to speak for a long time, but there's nothing to fear if you master the strategy that I'm going to give you. The main reasons why students do not do well is because of lack of practice, not used to speaking for 2 minutes, lack of feedback, and misinformation about the test. So if you don't practice, if you're not used to speaking for 2 minutes, you don't get any feedback, and you're listening to people telling you things about the test that aren't actually true, it's highly likely that you're going to fail. But if you understand really what to do, you get feedback on your work, and you practice this strategy, and you get used to speaking for 2 minutes, you really have nothing to fear. So let's have a look at a sample question again. Describe something you own, which is very important to you. You should say where you got it from, how long you have had it, what you use it for, and explain why it is important to you. So it's important that we understand the format. So again, this is the general topic that they want you to talk about. And then these are the 4 bullet points. It's really important that you understand the difference between these 2, because this is integral. It's really important to the strategy. So we have the general topic here, and then we have the bullet points here. So here's the strategy. You must talk about the main topic, and you must do this in a fluent way for up to 2 minutes. You must do that. So the main topic, all right, you must talk about the main topic. This is the main topic. Okay, this bit at the top, and you must do that for up to 2 minutes. Okay. However, you do not need to stick to the bullet points, talk about them in order, or even talk about them at all. Feel free to use them, but do not rely on them. There are many other things that you can talk about. So let's look at the example again. You must talk about this bit, the main topic. You can talk about the bullet points, but you don't have to. All right. This is very different from what most of your teachers are teaching you. What most of your teachers are saying is talk about bullet point number 1, talk about bullet point number 2, then talk about bullet point number 3, then talk about bullet point number 4. That is not correct. You do not need to do that. You can do that if you want, but you don't have to do that. All right. The only thing you must do is talk about the general topic for 2 minutes. So there's so many other things that you can talk about other than the bullet points. You could introduce the topic, you could describe the topic, you could show how you feel about the topic, tell a personal story, use an example, talk about the past, the present, the future, or you could use the bullet points. It's totally up to you. But what my strategy does is it gives you the flexibility and the freedom to talk about what you want, to talk about what you feel comfortable talking about. So here are the problems that students have. So let's say they get this topic and they look at this bullet point and they say, where you got it from? I can easily talk about that. How long you've had it? Well, I can tell them, but that's going to be like 5 seconds. So what you use it for? Yeah, I can talk about that. Explain why it is important to you. I don't really know why it's important to me. It's not actually important to me. So what happens is they talk about this for about 30 seconds. They talk about this one for about 2 seconds. They talk about this one for about 30 seconds. And then they get to this one and they go, I don't know. And then they get really nervous and they mess up. And believe me, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of students make this mistake in the test and do this over and over again. So what my strategy does is it tells you, just don't talk about this one. Don't talk about this one. Focus on the 2 that you feel comfortable talking about, and then pick a few other things to talk about that is easy for you to talk about. So for this person, they would say where they got it from, what they use it for. They would talk about it, you describe it, and then they would talk about what they're doing in the future. So by giving them this list of things that they can talk about and giving them the freedom to not talk about some of the things that they don't feel comfortable talking about, that means that you are going to be so much more fluent. Nelly says, not covering the whole bullet points in part 2, does it affect the score? No. Why would I teach you something that affects your score? Why would I teach you something that lowers your score? So have a think about it. I know many teachers have taught you that, but think about their expertise. Do they actually know what they're talking about? Most IELTS teachers, it's not like becoming a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer. They don't have to go and study and do lots of exams before they can call themselves an IELTS teacher. Anybody can call themselves an IELTS teacher. Doesn't mean they actually are one. So the strategy is this. Number 1, look at the question. Number 2, decide which of the bullet points you feel comfortable talking about. Number 3, add other things you like to talk about. Number 4, make a plan or think about your answer. So you only have 1 minute. So some people feel comfortable talking about it and just making a plan. Other people don't like to make a plan. They like to just think about it in their head. Number 5, speak until the examiner stops you. They will stop you. They have a life. They want to get out of that room. They want to get you out of the room as quickly as possible. So as when you get to 2 minutes, they will stop you. Okay? But you cannot read this strategy and immediately become better at part 2. You need to implement it, you need to practice it, and you need to get comfortable with it. And if you do that, you will have no problems. But if you just watch this video and then go, oh, I'll try that on test day, you'll probably fail your test because it's not good enough to just do it on test day for the first time, or even do it 2 or 3 times and the night before. You need to learn this by heart and master this strategy, and then you will see massive improvement. So it is essential that you practice this strategy before the exam, not the night before, the day before, the week before, consistently weeks before, and then you'll get the score that you need. Once you practice this strategy enough, it'll be like riding a bike. When you get on a bike, do you have to think about it? No, you just use your subconscious to ride your bike without even thinking about it. I'll show you later how you can practice later in the lesson. Okay, so part 3, let's move on to this one, which is probably the most difficult part. This is the part that students don't do so well in. And they normally, for part 1, they'll memorize lots of answers and do well because they've memorized answers. Part 2, they go downhill because they're not used to speaking for 2 minutes, or they've got really bad advice about what to do. And then part 3, they're exhausted. They just want the test to be over, and they give really short answers, and then they don't do so well. So we're going to help you avoid that problem. Part 3 requires you to discuss abstract ideas and develop your answers at length. So it's not about you, it's about ideas, and you need to develop your answers. Those are the 2 key things about part 3. It's not about you like part 1, and you need to develop your ideas. Do not worry if you get very difficult questions. The examiner will ask you more difficult questions if they think you are good. If they think that you are a band 5, a band 6, they won't ask you more difficult questions in part 3. Why would they? They already know what your level is. Asking you more difficult questions is just going to confirm that. But if they think that you are a band 7, 8, or 9, they will ask you more and more difficult questions to determine what your real level is. They will stretch you. So when you get asked a difficult question in part 3, you should be happy about that. If you get easy questions, I wouldn't be too happy. The key is to attempt the question and do your best. Many students, when they hear a question that is difficult in part 3, they just think it's too difficult, and they say, I don't know, or they laugh, or they give a very, very short answer. Attempt the question and use this strategy that I'm going to share with you, and that's really going to help you. So typical part 3 questions. Let's consider, first of all, how people's values have changed. What kind of things give status to people in your country? Have things changed since your parents' time? Finally, let's talk about the role of advertising. Do you think advertising influences what people buy? So they're not asking about you or your personal life. They're asking you to discuss ideas, all right? They're asking you to discuss abstract topics. And you'll notice that these questions are very much like task 2 writing questions. That's a good way to think about them. So task 2, which we'll look at tomorrow, you'll often get asked or write about abstract ideas like this. So here's the strategy. Number 1, understand the question. You would not believe the number of students that get to this point in the test and answer the question in the wrong way because they didn't really think about what the question was asking them. Don't be afraid to ask the examiner 2 questions. Can you please repeat the question? What does one word mean? Okay, so let's say you got this question. What are the drawbacks of low-cost air travel? If you don't understand this question, you can say, sorry, can you repeat the question, please? Or if you don't understand what low cost means, you could say, sorry, what do you mean by low-cost air travel? And they will paraphrase it, or they'll explain what that means. Okay, so this will give you the time to understand the question and clarify exactly what it means. Please don't ask them to repeat every question. Like if they say, where are you from? Say like, from? What does from mean? Don't do that. But for part 3, if you don't understand the question, you can ask them what it means, what one word means, or to repeat the question. And that will help you understand what's going on. Strategy part for number 2, you need to attempt the question. No matter what the question is, attempt it. If you get a difficult question, you should be happy. Don't laugh or say something like, that's a difficult question. The number of students that I've been doing tests with, and they feel nervous, so they just start laughing. The examiner is not going to give you any marks because for your laughter, or if you say something like, that's a difficult question. I don't really know. I haven't thought about that. That is not an answer to a question. You need to attempt it. If you have really no idea, be honest with the examiner. Okay. If you really, really, really have no idea, just say, explain why you have no idea. So I recently had a student. She was a female doctor from Saudi Arabia, and the question was about pop music. And she had no idea because in her culture or in her family, she wasn't allowed to listen to pop music. So instead of saying, I don't know, she said, I'm from Saudi Arabia. In my country, we don't really experience pop music. However, I did listen to this type of music in my family, and she talked about that. And that was a very, very good answer. All right. So, but the number of questions where you will have no idea how to answer are extremely rare. That very, very rarely comes up. And don't be afraid to lie. All right. It is not an honesty test. It is not a lie detector test. So if they are asking you to talk about something and you need to make it up, feel free to make it up. Only use this if you really have no idea. It's always best to give a real answer that is true, that is honest. But if you really can't think of an example or can't think of anything to talk about, just make it up. Don't make everything up because that will be more difficult. But if you're stuck, if you've no other option, then you can just lie. They're not going to check your answers. All right. They don't care about whether they're true or not. They only care about your fluency, your grammar, your vocabulary, and your pronunciation. So, number 3, once you've understood the question and you've decided to attempt the question, you are now going to develop your answer. So this is the key part of the strategy. It is imperative that you fully address the question asked. Think of it as a task 2 IELTS writing question. You need explanations, you need examples. The examiner must understand your position on the question. They must understand what you think about the question. Very simply, answer the question, explain why you believe that, give an example or a personal story, and then you can show the other side of that argument. But this is optional. Sometimes you won't be able to do that, or you won't be able to think of this. But you should give an answer to the question, explain why you think that, and give an example or a personal story. I'm going to show you how to do this in a second, give you a student sample answer. So don't worry if this is new or you don't fully understand this. So imagine you're asked this question. Do you think advertising influences what people buy? Yes, it does. Here's why that is true. Here's an example, personal story of why that's true. So this is the strategy in a nutshell. All right. Yes, it does. You explain. Here's an example. All right. Or no, it does not. Here's why that is true. Here's an example, personal story of why that's true. All right. 2 options. Yes, it is. Here's why it is. Here's an example. Or no, it's not. You can also combine the 2 above. Well, some people think it is. Here's why they think it is. Here's an example of them thinking it is. But other people, they don't think it is. Here's why they don't think that. And here's an example. All right. Again, don't worry if you don't fully understand this. I'm going to give you a sample answer now. So here's an answer from one of our VIP students. We were practicing with them, doing a one-on-one mock test with them, and this is what they said. So do you think advertising influences what people buy? Well, some would say that it does because companies spend billions every year on advertising. This is the first sentence they've answered the question. If it didn't work, they wouldn't spend so much money on it. This is an explanation. For example, Coca-Cola has billboards and TV advertisements in every country in the world, and most people choose Coke if they want to buy a cola. This is an example. Now they show the other side of it. They don't have to do this, but this person did. However, others would disagree and say that it doesn't influence what people buy. They've answered the question again. Because there are thousands of smaller brands that have no advertising budget and they do just fine. Explanation. I buy all of my clothes from a small charity shop, which obviously doesn't spend too much money on ads. personal story. Okay? Answered the question, explanation, example. Answered the question, explanation, personal story. They've shown both sides of it. They've combined the two. And what they've done is they've answered the question and they fully developed it. That's very, very different from, do you think advertising influences what people buy? Yeah, I think it does. That is a poor answer. This is a well-developed answer. You don't have to answer it exactly the same way. There are thousands of different ways that you could answer this, millions of different combinations of examples and explanations and answers. What you must do is you must answer the question and develop your answer. So don't stick to one strategy for this rigidly and just stick to it. You'll sound like a robot and you'll focus more on strategy than actually answering the question. This strategy is just to help you, but you shouldn't rely on it. So practice answering the question, explain why that is true, using examples or personal stories, and showing the other side. Just use this as a tool to help you answer the question. Don't rely on it and be sitting in the test going, okay, now I need to answer the question. Now I need to explain why it's true. Now I need to use an example. Practice it, internalize it, and then you'll be able to use it easily. And just like riding a bike, you will use it without even thinking about it. So now that we've looked at strategies for part 2 and part 3, now let's look at the different speaking skills and systems, which are fluency, pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. These are the 4 things and the 4 things only that the examiners are thinking about when they're giving you your band score. They don't care how you greet them, what your hand gestures are like, or your eye contact, or what shoes you're wearing, or any of that. They just care about your fluency, your pronunciation, your grammar, your vocabulary. If you focus on these 4 things and these 4 things only, you'll do very well. You need to identify which of these 4 areas you are weakest in and then work on that area. So let's start off with fluency. Big misconception about fluency is that it means speaking quickly and you get more scores or higher scores if you speak quicker. That's not true. It means speaking naturally without unnatural pausing, hesitation, or repetition. When I speak, I don't speak quickly, but I speak very fluently. That is because I don't pause that much, I don't hesitate that much, and I don't repeat myself. All right, but fluency also doesn't mean never pausing, never hesitating, or never repeating anything. You don't get a band 9 for never pausing or hesitating or repeating anything. You get a band 9 for speaking naturally without unnatural pausing, hesitation, or repetition. Everybody pauses, everybody hesitates, everybody repeats themselves. Band 9 students do this as well, all right? So you need to focus on reducing this as much as possible, but you're not looking for perfection. Most people have poor fluency for 2 reasons. Language-related fluency problems and content-related fluency problems. And one is a much bigger problem than the other. So let's look at content-related problems. Think of your brain as a computer. The part that deals with speech and language is just like your operating system. So Windows or iOS or whatever, for whatever computer you have the computer and then you have an operating system. If there are too many programs open at the same time, your computer will slow down. Or if you have like your browser, your Chrome browser open and you have 25 windows open at the same time, your computer is going to slow down. You do not get extra marks for impressive ideas, so why worry about them? So what is the problem here? People are trying to think too much about content. They're trying to think too much about ideas because they think that the examiner is looking for impressive ideas, and they're not. What the examiners are looking for is fluency, pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary. Those have nothing to do with ideas. There are no marks on the speaking test for ideas. So what you're doing is you're slowing down your computer, you're slowing down your operating system by focusing on content, by focusing on what you are going to say, rather than how you were going to say it. So in order to improve your fluency, you need to stop worrying so much about content and ideas in the speaking test, because they slow down your fluency, they cause problems for your computer, and they don't matter. There are no marks for ideas in the speaking test. If you don't believe me, go and look at the marking criteria. You won't find anything in there related to ideas. As long as you're answering the question, that's all you need to do. So what you need to stop doing is stop overthinking. The vast majority of students who we work with on our VIP course, we fix their fluency in a day by giving them this advice. Stop overthinking your ideas. Why? Because your ideas are not important. All right. Okay. So focus on the things that are important and ignore the things that are not important. But there are also language related fluency problems, linguistic problems. Thinking about grammar and vocabulary will cause fluency problems. So if you're always thinking about grammar, always thinking about vocabulary, then you're going to have a lot of fluency problems. This is why people from Asian countries normally have poor fluency compared to people from European countries, because people from Asian countries in general are taught that their grammar and vocabulary needs to be perfect. So if you're trying to think of perfect grammar and vocabulary, your fluency is going to be terrible. But if you are relaxed about grammar and vocabulary and you accept that you will make some mistakes, then you are going to improve your fluency. The more you think about grammar and vocabulary, the more likely it is that you will have fluency problems. There are two solutions to this. In the long term, improve your grammar and vocabulary. When I'm talking, when Band 9 students are talking, they're not thinking about grammar and vocabulary. That's the difference between a Band 9 student and a Band 7 student. Or in the short term, relax. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to make grammar mistakes. You're going to make vocabulary mistakes. People who get a Band 9 make small grammar mistakes. They make small vocabulary mistakes. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for balance between fluency and grammar and vocabulary. All right. So relax about making small mistakes. If you're constantly worried about making tiny, tiny, tiny mistakes, you're going to reduce your fluency. It's about balancing the two. So here's an exercise. Get a part 2 question, record yourself doing a 2-minute monologue. First time, record yourself and focus on having perfect grammar and vocabulary. Second time, don't worry about grammar and vocabulary, but just focus on fluency. Relax when it comes to grammar and vocabulary. You'll be amazed at the results, because the first time you do this, your fluency will not be too good, but you will still make grammar and vocabulary mistakes. Second time, your fluency will be much improved, but you will still make grammar and vocabulary mistakes at the same rate. Thinking about grammar and vocabulary during the test doesn't improve your grammar and vocabulary. You need to improve your grammar and vocabulary months before the test. Thinking about it on test day is not going to really help you. But if you relax about these, you'll still make the same mistakes, but you will improve your fluency. Now let's look at pronunciation. There are two main concerns. Can the examiner understand everything that you say? And can you use higher level pronunciation features? Higher level pronunciation features are things like intonation, sentence stress, word stress, connected speech. But the main thing you need to focus on is, can the examiner understand everything you say? If you want a Band 7, you need to focus on the first thing, because if the examiner cannot understand everything that you say, then you are going to get a 6 or below. If you need a 7 or above, the examiner must understand 100% of what you're saying. So the number one priority is clarity. When I say clarity, what I mean is, can the examiner understand what you are saying? If the examiner can't understand what you're saying, you will not get a 7 or above. So here is all of the sounds of English. Okay, here are all of the sounds. You need to understand which sounds you have a problem with. So, for example, my wife is from Vietnam, and in Vietnam, they often have problems with this sound, th, or this sound, the. Why? Because when people speak Vietnamese, they never put their tongue between their teeth. In order to make this sound, th, and this sound, the, you need to put your tongue between your teeth. In Vietnamese, when you're speaking Vietnamese, you never do that. So for a native Vietnamese speaker, these two sounds are very difficult. What you need to do, you need to figure out which of these sounds, these are vowel sounds and these are consonant sounds, do you have a problem with? And then work on those sounds to improve. And you can use an app like this. This app is called Sounds of Speech. So if you Google Sounds of Speech, don't worry, I'll give you all the links and everything that you need in a second. And what it does is it shows you exactly where to place your lips, where to place your tongue, your jaw, because pronunciation, when it comes to clarity, it's 100% physical. It is not really in your brain. Okay, your brain is going to tell your tongue where to go and your lips where to go. But it's like good pronunciation is like going to the gym or practicing a sport. It is about manipulating your body, your tongue, your lips, your jaw in order to make the correct sound. Higher level pronunciation features are things like word stress, sentence stress, intonation, connected speech. And I could make a whole course just on these, and I actually have made a whole course just on these. But you don't really need to worry about these too much until you master these. Focus on these first, focus on clarity first, and then you can worry about these. For now, if you Google IELTS pronunciation guide, you'll get everything you need. On my blog, on my free site, you will see a guide called IELTS pronunciation guide. And if you Google that and you go to IELTSadvantage.com, you will be able to see this, and it covers everything in more detail. We don't have time to go into, I have I think a 6 or 8 hour course just on pronunciation. We obviously don't have 6 to 8 hours, but this is just a free guide that will help you out with pronunciation. Grammar. You do not need to get extra marks for using every complex tense or structure. So if you ask most students, how do I improve my grammar score? They'll say, use more complex tenses and grammar structures, and that'll improve my score. That's not actually true. You get extra marks for clearly communicating with the examiner. All right. You should see grammar as a tool that will help you clearly communicate with the examiner, not a trick to help you get extra marks. People who try and memorize complex tenses and grammar structures, number one, they mess them up. So they reduce their grammar score because they make lots of mistakes. And they also reduce their fluency and coherence score because they don't focus on actually clearly communicating with the examiner. There are two things you need to consider: range and accuracy. Range is the range of your structures and your tenses and the complexity of your sentences, but equally as important is accuracy. How many mistakes are you making? So let's have a look at range first. Let's have a look at a number of different questions. After I take a glass of water, so a drink of water. What do you normally do on the weekend? What did you do last weekend? What's the best thing to do in your hometown on the weekend? What will you do this weekend? How has what people do on the weekend changed in recent years? Should people spend time with their friends or family on the weekend? If you could do anything this weekend, what would you like to do? So why am I showing you all of these different types of questions? Well, each question is going to result in you using a different tense or grammatical structure. What do you normally do on the weekend? When you're talking about habits or what you normally do, present simple. What did you do last weekend? Past simple. What's the best thing to do in your hometown? You're maybe going to use superlatives or comparatives. What will you do this weekend? You're going to use maybe will or going to talk about the future. How has what people do on the weekend changed in recent years? Present perfect. Should people spend time with their friends or family on the weekend? Giving your opinion. If you could do anything this weekend, what would you like to do? You're maybe going to use conditionals to talk about that one. So Just by answering the question, you are going to use a range of different tenses and structures if you just answer the question. In other words, range takes care of itself. You will be asked so many different questions, and the key is to identify the grammar structures you need to use and give them to the examiner. This is far more powerful than a teacher telling you you need to use this conditional and this superlative and the future past perfect conditional tense. Like, that is impossible to do. So what they're doing is they are slowing your computer down. You're going to make lots of mistakes. Your fluency is going to be terrible, instead of just simply answering the question and giving a fluent answer. Accuracy is a much, 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 much bigger problem. The examiner will be listening for the number of errors you make. So if you're trying to use grammar and tenses and use really complex structures, you're going to make lots and lots and lots of mistakes. Your accuracy is going to be terrible. So you're lowering your grammar score and you're lowering your fluency score by trying to increase the complexity of your grammar. By doing what you think is correct, you are lowering your score. So some common errors. You might have a problem with articles or prepositions or tenses or countable, uncountable nouns or verb-subject agreement or ing+2 infinitive or complex sentences or conditionals, excuse me, or relative clauses. There's probably at least one of these areas where you have a particular problem. What you need to do is you need to figure out your weak areas and you need to improve those areas. So for example, let's say every sentence you make an article mistake and a preposition mistake. It's impossible for you to get a 7 or above if that's the case, because prepositions and articles are in every sentence. To get a 7 or above, more than 50% of your sentences need to have no errors whatsoever. It is essential that you reduce the number of errors in your sentences. You should be aiming for more than 50% of your sentences to have no errors at all. How can you do this? The slow way or the faster way? So let's talk about both of these. The slow way, do it all yourself, listen to your practice sessions, identify your own mistakes, and do your own research and teach yourself. And the great thing about the slow way is it's free. The faster way, have a professional listen to you and identify your most common errors, learn from a specially designed course, have your progress checked, and then you'll go and get the score that you need. This is much faster, it's more effective. The downside of this is you have to pay for it. So let's look at vocabulary now. You must use advanced or complex words. You must use idioms regularly. You cannot repeat any words. You should learn lists of academic words. You should learn lists of words related to common topics. This is all wrong, okay? This is all wrong advice. So if you do this, you're going to make lots of mistakes. If you use idioms, you're going to sound like an idiot because nobody uses idioms in every sentence, only IELTS students. If you try and never repeat a word, your fluency is going to be terrible because you won't be able to think of any words to use. You should learn lists of academic words. That's wrong because you are not in an academic test. You are in a speaking test. They're testing your ability to talk normally to someone in a normal situation, not in an academic situation. You should learn lists of words related to common topics. Learning lists of words is not going to help you use those words in a sentence. So the most common advice about IELTS vocabulary is all wrong. So how to improve? Actively listen and read. So we talked about that yesterday in yesterday's lesson. Note down any new words. So learn words in context, not lists of words. Learn them 100%. So the synonyms, the antonyms, the collocations, the grammar, the pronunciation, especially the pronunciation for the speaking test. You need to know these words properly before you can use them. Synonyms, pronunciation, collocations, example sentences, and take risks using your new words and note your mistakes. Treat mistakes as opportunities for improvement. and review them regularly. And if you do that, your vocabulary is going to improve dramatically. But if you do these things, you're going to get 6 or 6.5 or 5.5 because none of these actually work. Why do teachers and schools teach you this? Because they want to tell you what you want to hear. They don't want to tell you that it's going to be difficult, that you have to put in work. They're going to tell you that you can use tricks and tips and hacks because that's what sells. That's what you guys want to buy. All right. I'm not selling you anything. I'm telling you the truth for free. So decide who you want to listen to. So vocabulary improvement plan. I'm going to email you my vocabulary improvement plan to you along with this lesson after we finish today. So if you don't have my vocabulary improvement plan, you can find it on IELTSadvantage.com for free, but I'll also email it to you guys. It's a PDF that I put together that puts all of the vocabulary stuff that you need in one document. So I'll email this to you. So don't panic. Finally, think about what IELTS want you to do in the speaking test. This is absolutely key. They want you to prove that you'll be able to clearly communicate with people in an English-speaking country. So when you move to Canada or you move to the UK or Australia or America, will you be able to speak to people? They're not testing whether you can memorize lists of vocabulary or whether you can use 7 idioms in one sentence. They're testing your ability to clearly communicate in English. If you focus on that, that's all you need to worry about. Whatever you decide to do, focus on that, and you'll be way ahead of 99% of people, because 99% of people are going on to YouTube and looking for tips and tricks and hacks, and those things are not teaching them how to clearly communicate in English. So practice at home for free. This is how you do it. Record yourself doing a practice test. You'll find questions at the British Council, IDP, IELTS.org, or Cambridge English. Any other practice questions from any other source are fake. Do not use them. Just because it has IELTS in the title of their website, like IELTS online test, doesn't mean that they are actually real tests. If you use fake tests, you're either going to get questions that are really, really difficult or really, really easy. Listen back and think about your performance. This is how you practice at home for free. This is what we actually get our VIP students to do as well. Even though we do one-on-one speaking tests and one-on-one advice with our VIP students, we also get them to do this. All right. Someone has posted their email address in the comments. Please do not do that. Do not post your email address in the comments. I'm not going to go and copy and paste your all of your email addresses. I have all of your email addresses already. So don't worry about posting your, please don't do that. So what did we learn today? We learned a strategy for each part of the test, how to improve grammar, vocabulary, fluency and coherence and pronunciation. We looked at how to practice at home for free. And here's your task. Click on the link to the task document. I'm going to give it to you now. Relax. I'm going to give it to you. Don't worry. Complete the task and post the results below this video. So below this video, post your thing. So here is the task. Here's the task document. I'm going to share it with you. Has all the questions, has everything. So look at this document, complete the task, then go to the video and post here. Okay, so I'm going to post it here. Task document. Boom. Okay, so it's in the description. I'm also going to post it here. Task document. Boom. Let me. Okay, it didn't allow me to do that. But you'll find it here. So if you click on that, and what I'll also do is I'll email this document to everybody. So you have it here, and I will also email it to everybody. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. So for writing task 2, and I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching this lesson, and I look forward to seeing your task.